Currently, GLBP is configured between R3 and R4 for the 10.143.0/24 network, and it's GLBP group number 43. Let's take a look at that with the output of show GLBP. And we can see here the output is quite extensive. And the reason why it's extensive is because not only do we have to keep track of the AVG information, we also have to keep track of all the active forwarders for that particular group. So let's examine R3 right now, and we can see that Gigabit Ethernet 0/0 is participating in GLBP group 43, and it's currently in the standby state for the AVG role, the Active Virtual Gateway role. The virtual IP address that's being used is 10.143.1. There's our timers, which are the defaults 3 and 10. We can also see that preemption is enabled, and there's no preemption delay that has been set. But if you want to set a preemption delay, you can do so. Currently, the active device is 10.143.4, which is R4. So R4 is the AVG. That's what this means. And its priority is 110. So that's why it is currently the AVG. It's the AVG because it has a higher priority than R3, and preemption is enabled in this case. So the standby device is R3. It is the local device. Waiting. Waiting has a default value of 100, and waiting can be used for two different purposes. It can be used to determine how load balancing of traffic will occur, or it can also be used for tracking of objects, so that way there we can determine whether an AVF should still be the AVF or not. So waiting can be used for two different things, and then there's thresholds for it as well, lower thresholds, upper thresholds, which are going to be utilized to identify at what point in time should this device no longer be an AVF? And at what point in time should it resume its responsibility as an AVF? By default, load balancing occurs in a round-robin style, meaning that MAC addresses will simply be handed out on a one-to-one basis. So if a client requests a MAC address via ARP, this MAC address is used. So AVF1's MAC address goes out. So that means the next ARP request gets AVF2's MAC address. The next ARP request gets AVF3's MAC address, and so on and so forth in a round-robin style. You can see here the MAC addresses of the group members and their IP addresses. So now we're getting into the AVF information. It says here that there are 2 forwarders, but we are currently only active as 1. So we know about all the forwarders. It says here, forwarder 1, state is active. So we are actively forwarding right now. We are AVF1. And the MAC address we're using is this one right here. So 0007B400, that's the well-known GLBP virtual MAC address. 2B is the group number. If you convert 2B, it equals 43, which is our group number. And 01 means we are AVF1. We are the owner. Preemption is enabled. So this preemption is completely different than the AVG preemption. This is AVF preemption. This is how we can take over the AVF role. If a device that's currently the AVF for a different MAC address fails. So if the device that is currently the forwarder, AVF2, notice it's not us because we're in the listen state. If for some reason it no longer exists, then we can take over this MAC address. And this is the MAC address right here. And who owns it right now? Who owns it? The device with this particular MAC address on its interface, meaning R4. So if we look at R4's MAC address, this is what it would be on its interface. But we don't even have to go that far. Compare this value here to this value right here, the group member. That's R4's IP and MAC address. So we can see right there who currently owns AVF2's MAC address. And it even says right here, the active is this device. If we go over to R4 and issue the same command, show GLBP, we'll see That R4 is currently the AVG. Standby is this device, which is R3. But if we look down below, you'll see forwarder 1, we are in the listening state. Why? Because R3 exists and it is the forwarder. We are AVF2 though. We are active for that right now. But if for some reason R3 goes away, we can become the forwarder. So these are two separate sections within the show GLBP command. The top section is for the AVG. It's for the AVG. So if you're troubleshooting AVG and problems, take a look at the top section. Is preemption enabled? What's the priority? And so on and so forth. That's for the AVG. Down below, it's all about the AVF.